Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to Men at Arms by Terry Pratchett, Part 5.
Right,
Said Sergeant Cullen.
this, men, is your truncheon. Also, nomenclatured your nightstick or baton of office. Also, nomenclatured your nightstick or baton of office.
He paused while he tried to remember his army days, and brightened up.
And you will look after it, he shouted. You will eat with it. You will sleep with it. You... Excuse me? Who said that? Down here. It's me, Lance-constable Cuddy. Yes, Pilgrim? How do we eat with it, Sergeant?
Sergeant Collins wound up machismo, wound down. He was suspicious of Lance-constable Cuddy. He strongly suspected Lance-constable Cuddy was a troublemaker.
What? Well, do we use it as knife or a fork or cut in half for chopsticks or what? What are you talking about?
Excuse me, Sergeant.
What is it, Lance-constable Angua?
How exactly do we sleep with it, sir?
Well, I meant... Corporal Nobbs, stop that sniggering right now!
Cullen adjusted his breastplate and decided to strike out in a new direction.
Now, what we have here is a puppet. Mommet or effigy, indicating a vaguely humanoid shape made of leather and stuffed with straw, mounted on a stake, called by the nickname of Arthur, weapons training for the use of... Forward, Lance-constable Angua. Tell me, Lance-constable, do you think you could kill a man?
How long will I have? There was a pause while they picked up Corporal Nobbs and patted him on the back until he settled down.
Very well,
said Sergeant Cullen.
What you must do now is take your truncheon like so, and on the command 1, proceed smartly to Arthur, and on the command 2, tap him smartly upon the bones. 1, 2...
The truncheon bounced off Arthur's helmet.
Bling! Very good. Only one thing wrong. Anyone tell me what it was?
They shook their heads.
From behind, said Sergeant Cullen. You hit him from behind. No sense in risking trouble, is there? Now you have a go, Lance-constable Cuddy. But Sarge, do it.
They watched. Perhaps we could fetch him a chair, said Angua after an embarrassing 15 seconds. Detritus sniggered.
Him too little to be a god, he said.
Lance-constable Cuddy stopped jumping up and down.
Sorry, Sergeant, he said. This isn't how dwarves do it, see? It's how gods do it, said Sergeant Cullen. All right, Lance-constable Detritus, don't salute. You give it a try.
Detritus held the truncheon between what must technically be called thumb and forefinger, and smashed it over Arthur's helmet. He stared reflectively at the truncheon stump. Then he bunched up his, for want of a better word, fist, and hammered Arthur over what was briefly its head until the stake was driven 3 feet into the ground.
Now the dwarf, he can have a go, he said.
There was another embarrassed 5 seconds. Sergeant Cullen cleared his throat.
Well, yes, I think we can consider him thoroughly apprehended, he said. Make a note, Corporal Nobbs. Lance-constable Detritus, don't salute, deducted $1 for loss of truncheon. And you're supposed to be able to ask him questions afterwards.
He looked at the remains of Arthur.
I think around about now is a good time to demonstrate the fine points of archery, he said.
Lady Sybil Ramkin looked at the sad strip of leather that was all that remained of the late Chubby. Who'd do something like this to a poor little dragon? She said.
We're trying to find out, said Vimes. We think maybe he was tied up next to a wall and exploded.
Carrot leaned over the wall of a pen.
Coochie, coochie, coo,
he said. A friendly flame took his eyebrows off. I mean, he was as tame as anything, said Lady Ramkin. Wouldn't hurt a fly. Poor little thing.
How could someone make a dragon blow up? Said Vimes. Could you do it by giving it a kick?
Oh, yes, said Sybil. You'd lose your leg, mind you.
Then it wasn't that. Any other way. So you wouldn't get hurt.
Not really. It'd be easier to make it blow itself up. Really, Sam, I don't like talking about.
I have to know.
Well, at this time of year the males fight. Make themselves look big, you know. That's why I always keep them apart.
Vimes shook his head. There was only one dragon, he said.
Behind them, Carrot leaned over the next pen, where a pear-shaped male dragon opened one eye and glared at him.
Who's the good boy, then?
Murmured Carrot. I'm sure I've got a bit of coal somewhere. The dragon opened the other eye, blinked, and then was fully awake and rearing up. Its ears flattened, its nostrils flared, its wings unfurled. It breathed in. From its stomach came the gurgle of rushing acids as sluices and valves were opened. Its feet left the floor, its chest expanded. Vimes hit Carrot at waist height, burying him to the ground. In its pen the dragon blinked. The enemy had mysteriously gone, scared off. It subsided, blowing off a huge flame. Vimes unclasped his hands from his head and rolled over.
What'd you do that for, Captain? Said Carrot. I wasn't. It was attacking a dragon, shouted Vimes. One that wouldn't back down.
He pulled himself to his knees and tapped Carrot's breastplate. Clink, clink.
You polished that up real bright, he said. You can see yourself in it. So can anything else.
Oh, yes, of course there's that, said Lady Sybil. Everyone knows you should keep dragons away from mirrors.
Mirrors,
said Carrot.
Hey, there were bits of...
Yes. He showed Chubby a mirror, said Vimes. The poor little thing must have been trying to make himself bigger than himself, said Carrot.
We're dealing here, said Vimes, with a twisted mind.
Oh no, you think so?
Yes.
But no, you can't be right, because Nobby was with us all the time.
Not Nobby,
said Vimes testily.
Whatever he might do to a dragon, I doubt if he'd make it explode. There's stranger people in this world than Corporal Nobbs, my lad.
Carrot's expression slid into a rictus of intrigued horror.
Gosh,
he said. Sergeant Cullen surveyed the butts. Then he removed his helmet and wiped his forehead.
I think perhaps Lance-constable Angua shouldn't have another go with the longbow until we've worked out how to stop her. Her getting in the way.
Sorry, Sergeant. They turned to Detritus, who was standing sheepishly behind a heap of broken longbows. Crossbows were out of the question. They sat in his massive hands like a hairpin. In theory, the longbow would be a deadly weapon in his hands just as soon as he mastered the art of when to let go. Detritus shrugged.
Sorry, mister, he said. Bows aren't troll weapon. Ha! said Colin. As for you, Lance-constable Cuddy.
Just can't get the hang of aiming, Sergeant.
I thought dwarves were famous for their skills in battle.
Yeah, but not these skills, said Cuddy.
Ambush,
murmured Detritus. Since he was a troll, the murmur bounced off distant buildings. Cuddy's beard bristled.
You devious troll, I get my... Well, no, said Sergeant Colin quickly. I think we'll stop training. You'll have to, sort of pick it up as you go along, all right?
He sighed. He was not a cruel man, but he'd been either a soldier or a guard all his life, and he was feeling put upon. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said what he said next.
I don't know. I really don't know. Fighting among yourselves? Smashing your own weapons? I mean, who do we think we're fooling? Now, it's nearly noon, and you take a few hours off. We'll see you again tonight if you think it's worth turning up.
There was a spang, a noise. Cuddy's crossbow had gone off in his hand. The bolt whiffled past Corporal Nobbs' ear and landed in the river where it stuck.
Sorry,
said Cuddy.
Tisk, tisk, said Sergeant Colin.
That was the worst part. It would have been better all round if he'd called the dwarf some names. It would have been better if he'd made it seem that Cuddy was worth an insult. He turned around and walked off towards Pseudopolis Yard. They heard his muttered comment.
What him say?
Said Detritus. A fine body of men, said Angua, going red. Cuddy spat on the ground, which didn't take long on account of its closeness. Then he reached under his cloak and produced, like a conjurer extracting a size 10 rabbit from a size 5 hat, his double-headed battle axe, and started to run. By the time he reached the virginal target, he was a blur. There was a rip, and the dummy exploded like a nuclear haystack. The other two wandered up and inspected the result, as pieces of chaff gently drifted to the ground. Yes, all right, said Angua, but he did say you're supposed to be able to ask them questions afterwards.
He didn't say they've got to be able to answer them, said Cuddy grimly. Lance-constable Cuddy, deduct $1 for target, said Detritus,
who already owed $11 for bows.
If it's worth turning up,
said Cuddy, losing the axe somewhere about his person again.
Speciesist?
I don't think he meant it that way, said Angua.
Oh, it's all right for you,
said Cuddy. Why?
'Cause you a man,
said Detritus. Angua was bright enough to pause for a moment to think this over. A woman, she said.
Same thing.
Only in broad terms. Come on, let's go and have a drink. The transient moment of camaraderie in adversity completely evaporated.
Drink with a troll? Drink with a dwarf?
All right, said Angua. How about you and you coming and having a drink with me? Angua removed her helmet and shook out her hair. Female trolls don't have hair, although the more fortunate ones are able to cultivate a fine growth of lichen, and a female dwarf is more likely to be complimented on the silkiness of her beard than on her scalp. But it was just possible the sight of Angua scrapped little sparks off some shared, ancient, cosmic maleness. "I haven't really had the chance to look around," she said, "but I saw a place in Gleam Street," which meant that they had to cross the river, at least two of them trying to indicate to passers-by that they weren't with at least one of the other two, which meant that, with desperate nonchalance, they were looking around. Which meant that Cuddy saw the dwarf in the water. If you could call it water. If you could still call it a dwarf. They looked down.
"You know,"
said Detritus after a while,
"that look like that dwarf who makes weapons in Rhyme Street."
"Bjorn Hammercock," said Cuddy.
"That the one? Yeah?"
"It looks a bit like him," said Cuddy, conceded, still talking in a cold, flat voice, "but not exactly like him." "What do you mean?" said Angua. "Because Mr. Hammercock," said Cuddy, "didn't have such a great big hole where his chest should be."
"Doesn't he ever sleep?" thought Vimes. "Doesn't the bloody man ever get his head down? Isn't there a room somewhere with a black dressing gown hanging on the door?" He knocked on the door of the oblong office.
"Ah, Captain," said the patrician, looking up from his paperwork. "You were commendably quick."
"Was I?"
"You got my message," said Lord Veterinary.
"No, sir. I've been occupied."
"Indeed. And what could occupy you?"
"Someone has killed Mr. Hammerlock, sir. Someone has killed Mr. Hammerhock, sir. A big man in the dwarf community. He's been shot with something. Some kind of siege weapon or something, and dumped in the river. We've just fished him out. I was on the way to tell his wife. I think he lives in Treacle Street. And then I thought, since I was passing..."
"This is very unfortunate."
"Certainly it was for Mr. Hammerhock," said Vimes.
The patrician leaned back and stared at Vimes. "Tell me," he said, "how was he killed?"
"I don't know. I've never seen anything like it. There was just a great big hole. But I'm going to find out what it was."
Did I mention that Dr. Cruces came to see me this morning?"
"No, sir."
"He was very concerned."
"Yes, sir."
"I think you upset him."
"Sir?"
The patrician seemed to be reaching a decision. His chair thumped forward. "Captain Vimes?"
"Sir?"
"I know that you are retiring the day after tomorrow and feel, therefore, a little restless. But while you are captain of the night watch, I am asking you to follow two very specific instructions."
"Sir?"
"You will cease any investigations connected with this theft from the Assassin's Guild. Do you understand? It is entirely guild business."
"Sir."
Vimes kept his face carefully immobile. "I'm choosing to believe that the unspoken word in that sentence was a yes, Captain."
"Sir."
"And that one too. As for the matter of the unfortunate Mr. Hammerhock, the body was discovered just a short while ago?"
"Yes, sir."
"Then it's out of your jurisdiction, Captain."
"What, sir?"
"The day watch can deal with it."
"But we've never bothered with that hours of daylight jurisdiction stuff."
"Nevertheless, in the current circumstances, I shall instruct Captain Quirk to take over the investigation. if it turns out that one is necessary.
If one is necessary, if people don't end up with half their chest gone by accident, meteor strike perhaps, thought Vimes.
He took a deep breath and leaned on the patrician's desk.
Mayonnaise Quirk couldn't find his arse. Couldn't find his arse with an atlas, and he's got no idea about how to talk to dwarves. He calls them grit suckers. My men found the body. It's my jurisdiction.
The patrician glanced at Vimes' hands. Vimes removed them from the desk as if it had suddenly grown red hot. Night Watch. That's what you are, Captain. Your writ runs in the hours of darkness.
It's dwarves we're talking about. If we don't get it right, they'll take the law into their own hands. That usually means chopping the head off the nearest troll. And you'll put Quirk on this?
I've given you an order, Captain.
But you may go. You can't. I said you may go, Captain Vimes. Sir.
Vimes saluted. Then he turned about and marched out of the room. He closed the door carefully so that there was barely a click. The patrician heard him thump the wall outside. Vimes wasn't aware, but there were a number of barely perceptible dents in the wall outside the oblong office, their depths corresponding to his emotional state at the time. By the sound of it, this one would need the services of a plasterer. Lord Veterinary permitted himself a smile, although there was no humor in it. The city operated. It was a self-regulating college of guilds linked by the inexorable laws of mutual self-interest, and it worked. On average, by and large, overall, normally. The last thing you needed was some watchman blundering around upsetting things like a loose siege catapult. Normally. Vimes seemed in a suitable emotional state. With any luck, the orders would have the desired effect. There's a bar like it in every big city. It's where the coppers drink. The guards seldom drank in Ankh-Morpork's more cheerful taverns when they were off duty. It was too easy to see something that would put them back on duty again, so they generally went to the Bucket in Gleam Street. It was small and low-ceilinged, and the presence of city guards tended to discourage other drinkers. But Mr. Cheese, the owner, wasn't too worried about this. No one drinks like a copper who has seen too much to stay sober. Carrot counted out his change on the counter.
That's 3 beers, 1 milk, 1 molten sulfur on Coke with phosphoric acid. With umbrella in it, said Detritus. And a slow, comfortable double entendre with lemonade. With a fruit salad in it, said Nobby. Woof!
And some beer in a bowl, said Angua.
That little dog seems to have taken quite a shine to you, said Carrot.
Yes, said Angua. I can't think why. The drinks were put in front of them. They stared at the drinks. They drank the drinks. Mr. Cheese, who knew coppers, wordlessly refilled the glasses, and Detritus insulated mug. They stared at the drinks. They drank the drinks.
You know, said Colin, after a while, what really gets me, is they just dumped him in the water. I mean, not even weights, just dumped him, like it didn't matter if he was found. You know what I mean?
What gets me, said Cuddy, is that he was a dwarf.
What gets me is that he was murdered, said Carrot.
Mr. Cheese passed along the line again. They stared at the drinks. They drank the drinks. Because the fact was that, despite all evidence to the contrary, murder was not a commonplace occurrence in Ankh-Morpork. There were, it was true, assassinations. And as aforesaid, there were many ways one could inadvertently commit suicide. And there were occasional domestic fracas on a Saturday night as people sought a cheaper alternative to divorce. There were all these things, but at least they had a reason, however unreasonable.
Big man in the dwarfs was Mr. Hammerhock, said Carrot. A good citizen too. Wasn't always stirring up old trouble like Mr. Strong in the Arm.
He's got a workshop in Rhyme Street, said Nobby.
Had,
said Sergeant Colin. They stared at the drinks. They drank the drinks. What I want to know is, said Angua, what put that hole in him?
Never seen anything like that,
said Colin. Hadn't someone better go and tell Mrs. Hammerhock, said Angua.
Captain Vimes is doing it,
said Carrot.
He said he wouldn't ask anyone else to do it. Rather him than me, said Colin fervently. I wouldn't do that for a big clock. They can be fearsome when they're angry, those little buggers.
Everyone nodded gloomily, including the little bugger and the bigger little bugger by adoption. They stared at the drinks. They drank the drinks. Shouldn't we be finding out who did it? Said Angua.
Why?
Said Nobby. She opened and shut her mouth once or twice, and finally came out with, in case they do it again.
It wasn't an assassination, was it?
Said Cuddy.
No,
said Carrot.
They always leave a note, by law.
They looked at the drinks. They drank the drinks. What a city, said Angua.
It all works. That's the funny thing, said Carrot. Do you know, when I first joined the watch, I was so simple I arrested the head of the Thieves Guild for thieving.
Sounds good to me, said Angua.
Got into a bit of trouble for that,
said Carrot.
You see, said Colin, thieves are organized here. I mean, it's official. They're allowed a certain amount of thieving. Not that they do much these days, mind you. If you pay them a little premium every year, they give you a card and leave you alone. Saves time and effort all round.
And all thieves are members? Said Angua.
Oh yes, said Carrot. Can't go thieving in Ankh-Morpork without a guild permit. Not unless you've got a special talent.
Why? What happens? What talent? She said.
Well, like being able to survive being hung upside down from one of the gates with your ears nailed to your knees, said Carrot.
Then Angua said, That's terrible.
Yes, I know, but the thing is, said Carrot, the thing is it works. The whole thing. Guilds and organized crimes and everything. It all seems to work. Didn't work for Mr. Hammerhock, said Sergeant Colin.
They looked at their drinks very slowly, like a mighty sequoia beginning the first step towards resurrection as a million save the trees leaflets. Detritus toppled backwards with his mug still in his hand. Apart from the 90-degree change in position, he didn't move a muscle.
It's the sulfur, said Cuddy, without looking around. It goes right to their head.
Carrot thumped his fist on the bar.
We ought to do something. We could nick his boots, said Nobby. I mean about Mr. Hammerhock.
Oh, yeah, said Nobby.
You sound like old Vimesy.
If we was to worry about every dead body in this town.
But not like this,
Snapped Carrot.
Normally it's just, well, suicide or guild fighting, stuff like that. But he was just a dwarf, pillar of the community. Spent all day making swords and axes and burial weapons and crossbows and torture implements. And then he's in the river with a great big hole in his chest. Who's going to do anything about it if not us?
You've been putting anything in your milk? Said Colin.
Look, the dwarves can sort it out. It's like Quarry Lane. Don't stick your nose where someone can pull it off and eat it.
We're the City Watch, said Carrot.
That doesn't mean just that part of the city who happens to be over 4 feet tall and made of flesh.
No dwarf did it, said Cuddy, who was swaying gently. No troll neither. He tried to tap the side of his nose and missed. The reason being, he still had all his arms and legs on.
Captain Vimes wanted investigated, said Carrot.
Captain Vimes is trying to learn to be a civilian, said Nobby.
Well, I'm not going to,
Colin began, and got off his stool.
He hopped. He jumped up and down a bit, his mouth opening and shutting. Then the words managed to come out. My foot!
What about your foot?
Something's stuck in it.
He hopped backwards, clutching at one sandal, and fell over Detritus.
You'd be amazed what can get stuck to your boots in this town, said Carrot.
There's something on the bottom of your sandal, said Angua. Stop waving it about, you silly man. She drew her dagger. Bit of card or something. With a drawing pin in it. You picked it up somewhere. Probably took a while for you to thread it through. There. Bit of a card, said Carrot. There's something written on it. Angua scraped away the mud. Gone. Gone. What does that mean? She said.
I don't know. Something's gone, I suppose. Perhaps it's Mr. Gone's visiting card. Whoever he is, said Nobby. Who cares? Let's have a
Carrot took the card and turned it over and over in his hands.
Save the pin, said Cuddy. You only get 5 of them for a penny. My cousin Gimmick makes them.
This is important, said Carrot slowly. The captain ought to know about this. I think he was looking for it.
What's important about it? Said Sergeant Colin. Apart from my foot hurting like blazes.
I don't know. The captain'll know, said Carrot stubbornly.
You tell him then, said Colin. He's staying up at her ladyship's now.
Learning to be a gentleman, said Nobby. I'm going to tell him, said Carrot. Angua glanced through the grubby window. The moon would be up soon. That was one trouble with cities. The damn thing could be lurking behind a tower if you weren't careful. And I'd better be getting back to my lodgings, she said. I'll accompany you, said Carrot quickly. I ought to go and find Captain Vimes in any case. It'll be out of your way. Honestly, I'd like to. She looked at his earnest expression. I couldn't put you to the trouble, she said. That's all right. I like walking. It helps me think. Angua smiled, despite her desperation. They stepped out into the softer heat of the evening. Instinctively, Carrot settled into the policeman's pace. Very old street, this, he said. They say there's an underground stream under it. I read that. What do you think? Do you really like walking? Said Angua, falling into step. Oh yes, there are many interesting byways and historical buildings to be seen. I often go for walks on my day off. She looked at his face. Ye gods, she thought. Why did you join the watch? She said. My father said it'd make a man of me. It seems to have worked. Yes, it's the best job there is. Really?
Oh, yes. Do you know what policeman means?
Angua shrugged. No.
It means man of the polis. That's an old word for city.
Yes?
I read it in a book. Man of the city.
She glanced sideways at him again. His face glowed in the light of a torch on the street corner, but it had some inner glow of its own. He's proud, she remembered the oath. Proud of being in the damn watch, for God's sake.
Why did you join?
He said. Me? Oh, I like to eat meals and sleep indoors. Anyway, there isn't that much choice, is there? It was that or become, seamstress.
And you're not very good at sewing?
Angua's sharp glance saw nothing but honest innocence in his face. Yes, she said, giving up. That's right. And then I saw this poster. The City Watch needs men. Be a man in the City Watch. So I thought I'd give it a go. After all, I'd only have something to gain. She waited to see if he'd failed to pick this one up, too. He did.
Sergeant Cullen wrote the notice,
said Carrot. He's a fairly direct thinker. He sniffed.
Can you smell something?
He said.
Smells like, a bit like someone's thrown away an old privy carpet.
Oh, thank you very much, said a voice very low down, somewhere in the darkness. Oh yes, thank you very much. That's very wash name of you. Old privy carpet, oh yes. I can't smell anything, Angua lied. Liar, said the voice. Or hear anything,